Phil.
We got an excellent, good morning again. Today again on Thursday, February 6th, 2025. And we're back in House Transportation. And this section of the agenda, again, I talked about is committee discussion. We've talked about a couple different pieces of trying to use committee discussion a little bit more. This piece right now, to set it up and queue it up, is that we have the budget. I have to commit this number of $884 million. We have 3 budget pieces left coming in for next week. Well, 2, and then a little bit more information on some more. So for next week, we'll have the Department of Motor Vehicles will present their budget, and you'll have a chance to ask questions about that. And environmental policy and sustainability, their portion of the $9.5 million budget, Patrick and Andrea will come back in and present her actual budget. She's been in a few different times on electric vehicles, et cetera, but she hasn't presented her budget of that portion. And we may have some additional information on the maintenance budget. So those will be on the agenda for next week. And then all of the budget of the $884 million will have been, the department heads will present each section of the budget from, we've had aviation, rail, central garage, and fleet people were in. We just did town highways and all of that yesterday. We'll have gotten information at least at some level for the $884 million. So now, knowing that you still got 2 more parts to go and a little bit of additional information coming in on maintenance. What I'm looking for is in the budget, what additional areas you feel we need more information on, whatever particular areas of the agency that we need to dig deeper on. What do we want, any more additional pieces that we might want to get from JFO? What I'm looking for is feedback from the committee. Are we in a position to be able to move forward on the entire budget portion of the T-bill before, as we're going to then start getting into the language? We're going to start hearing the agency's language requests on the T-bill, policy request changes, language law changes. While we're doing that, are there any more pieces, and there's other pieces of the area that you want to dig into? What we want to see more about? I do have a request to do more on public transportation. We spent a fair amount of time on it already, but we have a couple more requests for providers direction, and Green Mountain Transit has not presented. So that's, they also have a report to present on, which is, 500 pages. So I hope they're not going to go page by page. But I'll queue it up, at least understanding what we're trying to get accomplished here in the next half hour. Representative Burke, you can.
Are we going to hear from the, we're going to get to the people who can also talk about the advanced clean cars?
We have advanced clean car coming in today, and then based on what I have heard from committee members, that we want to hear, we're hearing from the dealers, and then we're going to hear another perspective on that. Yeah. So yes, and we can broaden the discussion to include all of those pieces. It may not be it's not in the particular T-bill at this point. It's not in the budget part. So yes, I want to hear other issues. That is one of those other issues that's going on. And yes, we can hear another perspective on it. So I guess I'm answering it yes, but we can discuss all of the issues that you might want to have on there. But it doesn't necessarily answer, it's not a budget question right now.
I think particularly, too, if it's speak a lot to the air quality issues of that.
If we hadn't missed 7 free throws in a row last night, to make it finish substantially later than it otherwise would have, I would have gotten to all the emails and the requests and the information. And then to have this morning's breakfast as early as it was, I owe at least 3 of you and 4 of you in the room answers on things. But if we had made free throws, we might have had more time to do that.
We understand.
So yes, yes to your question, and we'll hear more than one perspective, which is the same thing we're at, in effect, I guess, on public transit. We've heard the agency. Now we have to hear other people, other sides, other pieces. Representative what?
So in terms of what we'd like more detail on, I have to say that, a lot of the discussions up until today, at least for me, have felt more kind of like informational, like hearing about aviation and kind of getting an overall understanding of the breadth and depth of what the AOT oversees. Yet talking about aviation with their budget and taking us through that is a different exercise to me. And so when we're looking at this pretty enormous budget, and I know this isn't a request that can be satisfied, but the more detail that we can hear about the individual sections of the budget and like, what they're planning, what they're feeling like they needed to cut to make the budget. That feels like really helpful information, at least to me, and in understanding, what we're gonna be approving for the 2026 budget. So I'm just advocating for more detail, like particularly on maintenance, as we talk about, because it's such a huge number, but to hear from them, what makes up the 7.9% increase. And then looking at paving, like if it's a 20% decrease, what's, what things are not happening. So I'm just advocating for more, I guess, more conversations about the particular line items on this budget would be helpful to me.
We do have paving testimony on the agenda for next week. I believe that it's being worked on. I've got the proposed.
Like,
Yes, look at that.
and bridges, again, that's a big cut. And like, is there cause for concern that we have some bridges that are in poor quality, but are not gonna make the budget this year? Then down to kind of environmental and like bike and pedestrian, which I'm just kind of personally interested in, like what's in there. And bike and pedestrian is not a particularly huge part of the budget, but I think it's really important. The transportation alternatives.
Follow up on what Candace was just saying, maybe some of these things, I hope, are under control and they're fixed. I know they talked to us about what good a shape, how great a shape our bridges are. Before last,
But those were rail, weren't they?
were they rail or standard bridges across the state?
I
I'll
definitely
have to clarify
recall, what's his name, Rob? I can't remember.
It was Dan from Railroad.
But in rail, and he's
Yeah.
talked about how we replaced, 24
Yeah,
bridges in the past 4 years, which
Yeah.
sounded like great progress, but it's rail bridges, it's not.
and then in
Highway
paving and
bridges.
stuff, I think of just in my own area where we've been the last 5 years, I think they've done a heck of a job. And except for that Route 16, which is on their docket that they're gonna do this year or soon, the roadways are in very good shape where I am. And is it possible they caught up with a lot of projects and things are in good shape? I know we had two arteries that were terrible. One was Charleston Willoughby Lake. They fixed it 2 years ago. Then we had the worst road in America. That was from Highland Pond to the New Hampshire border, but they fixed it. And so I know in Orleans County, we don't have that many big projects. They're gonna finish up I-91 in Derby, and we got that Route 16, which will eventually go all the way to East Montpelier. Is it possible they're doing a hell of a job and heck of a job and they're ahead of the curve?
It's discussion, not necessarily answers.
Okay.
So.
Sorry.
No, I like what if you're looking to me to answer that, I'm not gonna be able to do that, but
Okay.
but I appreciate where you're headed. And I was gonna make some joke about you may be the worst road in the world, but nobody's ever seen it because it's
I saw it all the time, unfortunately. I had to go to New Hampshire.
Representative Pound.
Yeah, it's just discussion. A couple things, I think the state did show us, they have measures of paving quality and bridge quality, not just rail. I think they shared some of that. We could certainly find some more out. I kind of went back to my original goals and they haven't changed all that much, really. I think that the state does a good job with their state roads and federal highway. They get lots of federal money to maintain them. I think generally the bridges, are showing they do a really good job of measuring how they're doing. It seems like they're keeping up, paving, keeping up. And I fall back to municipal roads and bridges and structures. And if we just look at this, last year we had to pull teeth to get a little bit more in structures. I think it was structures. And so we found a little bit, we stole a little bit, we got a little bit more, and now it's gone back. And if you look at and last year for town aid, and that's where Heinsberg takes that money, that's where they do their paving. So they get their town aid, it's based on the number of miles. They take that money every couple of years and they put it to paving. That's what they do. That's how they do it. Any town can do it. And last year, we changed the formula so it would at least keep up with inflation. But these structures and the roadway programs, they're not keeping up with inflation at all. Yet the municipalities have to maintain those roads and they do it on property tax, strictly property tax, local property tax. And talking with my town administrator, they know the areas they need to get ready for storms, and there's no way they have the funds to do it. And I look at it as it's an investment. If they do it ahead of time, we're gonna survive the next storm to some extent. I think the state has found after Irene, when they upgraded things after Irene and more flooding followed, guess what? They didn't wash out roads. So I think we have to help our municipalities to do that. And I don't see that in this budget at all. I see them going backwards because it's not even keeping up with inflation. I do want to continue some of the climate actions that we've provided. I think we're moving in the right direction. I find it as an affordability issue, and I would be curious. I'd like to look more into. We provided additional money last year, and we provided money from EV registrations and plug-in hybrid registrations. Additional money there to go to community charging, whether it's in apartments or condos, helping them. Because I find that to be a restriction on why people might not consider electric vehicles. And then some policies about state roads and how they interact with villages. And so those are the couple of things. So if you all just sign up for that. It's a home early today.
King Philip was from Spain.
Yeah, I don't know.
King Philip was from Spain, wasn't
Well, they had King Philip's War.
There you go.
Yeah.
Carlos.
he? Excellent. Okay.
Well, perhaps we could request a review of the town highway programs budget, where we could get into some of the details that
Yeah.
Representative Couch was discussing.
I did mention to the chair that my town administrator is more than happy to come in and just sort of talk about, our experience. And, when we discuss it, it's like, well, it's not all about Heinsberg, really. So if we were to do that, maybe we get somebody else in too. But really we did hear yesterday from leagues and cities and towns who described that same problem. They said, this is a real problem. And it'd be great to get my town administrator in. Was acting road commissioner for a while. He knows it and lives it. And I think, if he can describe the experience Heinsberg's had, and maybe we get somebody else in too. And so we could ask, hey, what would you do with a little extra money? So.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I don't think it'd be an individual town, it'd be the head of the RPCs.
Yeah,
And we
we
did,
can get them in too.
Sure.
I did want to also mention, thank you for that one. There was quite a bit of questions about the MPO, I think it was called, Municipal.
Metropolitan Planning Organization.
Yep, so that is, our committee assistant is already working on that, and that's part of the draft. In terms of the draft agenda coming up, we will hear from that came up in earlier testimony, so that's already proposed for next week as a follow-up. And papers is next week, and then working on the project is for next week that we've been working on based on what we saw. And we have Jeremy Reed back in on the V transparency, and we're also is it him that also was gonna hit the Black Book a little bit? Remember, somebody had asked about the Black Book. a 5-minute primer on that. So I'll remember if he could do that or not. He's also leaving in on cost pressures and some of the data they have on the bids coming back at really high levels of bid returns. Representative, oh, I'm sorry, is that your hand there?
Just a quick clarifying question. Did you say someone's gonna come in to talk more about the maintenance budget too, or?
That is a possibility. Ernie Patton is got some additional information that he did for the Senate, and he offered to do it for us. So if we're going to put him in the agenda, we're going to bring him back and
Yeah.
do more on the maintenance portion. Yes, but so that would be that 2.5 pieces for the DMV, environmental and policy, and then perhaps some more on maintenance will be coming up.
I'll follow on. On the 30th, we saw Ernie, and I had a specific question about the district budgets, because it didn't follow with his math.
Yep.
And so he said that he would come back and explain that to us. And so I request that he might do that.
It's the problem with taking notes at the same time. You're supposed to be looking up, I guess. So I'm not sure where we were at next. I think
I think Representative
Lally hasn't gone yet on this one.
Yeah, so I think it's really clear we have a few dollars, many competing needs, and need to make those scarce dollars go as far as they can. So making communities more walkable and bikeable and transit friendly complements EVs to reduce our emissions, and making transit more appealing, I think is one of the things that can encourage its use, as the previous testimony indicated. So I think that one of the until we can figure out how to defederalize dollars, a lot of our communities are going to be really dependent on federal dollars for adding enhancements that make our communities more bikeable and walkable, and which also then makes transit more functional and brings that return on investment. And so one of the challenges that we face now is NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act, is a barrier to building walking and biking infrastructure faster and more cheaply. So as I say this, who knows, that could all be gotten away, but it could be kind of like a policy value add for us to look at how our current contract, the state has a contract, it's my understanding, with EPA, I suppose. And right now, an investigation into historic assets has to happen before any kind of project scoping can happen. And so this delays projects, and it adds considerable amounts of money precisely when we are desperate to have more walkable and bikeable communities. And I would add that, a lot of times when, a road, some municipality needs to do something in the road that leads to an expansion of pavement in the roadway, there is not the same requirement. Those are actually, if federal dollars are somehow part of that mix, those are actually considered screened or exempt activities. So we're sort of playing on a different playing field here, where walking and biking, has to abide by more onerous rules. And it just seems like some clarification on that would be helpful. I'm not sure what the right, approach is, but I just wanted to raise it as another little thing that helps, that ends up driving up costs, I think unnecessarily.
I will get back to my looking at charging infrastructure for apartments and condos. We did provide additional money for community development. Maybe we could bring those folks in and just see. I thought their program was
Bronwyn from
Yes, and their program was quite impressive. how they did it. And, you know, with the additional funds, how they're doing, I guess.
And that is funded by the infrastructure impact fee, which we
The
Well, it's supposed-
registration fees are should be going into.
Supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, but there was a road impact fee that was part of that, I believe, that kicked in February.
Road impact?
Not sure. I think it was,
Okay.
came out of the DMV bill for additional EV and plug-in hybrid registration costs, doubling for EVs. And that money was to be focused into charging infrastructure.
multi-unit
So we
loan.
get to
Yeah.
the mileage.
Or maybe for the whole,
We're going to
Can I
hear
phone a
about
friend?
this. Well, I can say at least this part. This area, at least to some degree, is on Friday morning. We're going to get an update on relationship to ACCD and.
Okay.
So, that's the answer to that question, right? Friday, 10:45.
Oh, yeah.
Wait a minute, that's tomorrow, huh? Look at that. 24 hours from now, you'll be more informed on this subject than we are today.
Okay.
That might be, I don't know, subject to change just with the force stuff going on.
Yeah,
Right. Fortunately, the presenter is a veteran and they're well aware of the floor. And the BAA is on the floor tomorrow, right? Is that the case? We present today?
Well, we have.
today it's
both.
So, yeah.
Second.
So it's not gonna end as quickly as usually as we potentially.
Yeah, that's all.
second reading.
So
we'll be
play it by
like-
ear.
We were considering putting another testifying in on Friday morning, but I'm
Yeah.
hearing on the same thing, and so who knows when. We may or may not get off the floor on Friday, as quickly. Or, and who knows how long we go today. Okay. So the short answer to your question is your phone a friend will be in on Friday. I still have your note from before regarding an update on standards, and those are all part of the follow-ups that haven't happened yet, but they're in the list. They're in the queue. They're in the queue. I did have a, and you know, the phone to friend thing is always great stuff. The bike ed, we did hear from them. Why was the big jump on the recommend? Is there another big federal piece or an earmark or something? There was a huge,
From that, from.
well, there's a huge judge, yeah, from this year to the governor's recommend. What was the big jump there?
We got $4 million in,
yeah, it's
IIJA funding.
Yeah.
federal
That,
funding.
that was for,
That was last year.
that
We
was
doubled
last
it.
year.
Yeah, we doubled it. Shouldn't be like, did it go down by 4 million?
No, I'm saying it's going up a lot.
10.
It's going up a lot.
Michelle knows.
Okay.
If I may, Chairman Walker, Michelle Bloomhauer from my Agency of Transportation. That testimony indicated that the jump in that was due to the South Burlington Bridge over the interstate.
Pass through. Thank you.
Discretionary
Yep.
grant.
There you
So
go.
that's
I
been
thought there was a
embedded in
project.
there. So if you go to your white book and look at the
Yep.
bike ped section, you'll see a pretty big number in there for that.
Well, I remember I had a project specific pass through. That's what it was. So the number's really pretty close to the same, except the 10 million is out there. And that's passing through on federal funds. So it's not statewide network work increase. It's the handling of that particular project.
Oh, 10 million. Yeah.
Right, that's for the bridge over the interstate in South Burlington that they got a federal earmark for some way or another. That's not the NPO piece, but that is a particular project that they're running. Okay. And we are hearing paving and about the big drops, and we are hearing from the Associated General Contractors on workforce issues, related expenses. We have bid update coming back on how bids are up to the spot. Is there anything else that we want on budget related additional information? I'm not exactly sure, Representative White, how the additional detail will come through based on top of what we've heard, but I do hear your question and concern or desire for more information.
Michelle, do we still do that orange book that would maybe address Representative White's question? You know, it's all detail we used to get. And all the statistics, the good and very poor. We still do that?
Oh, I think, are you talking about the fact book?
Yeah, the fact book.
We do not do the fact
Oh,
book anymore.
well, we can't help you. Yeah, because that had everything that you.
Everyone's back now.
That's yours, sir?
Oh, it's 2 years ago, yeah. Because that really broke down everything. But stop doing that.
Well, it
A lot of
was
work.
a significant amount of work, and it also, we didn't usually get too many inquiries or understanding that people were utilizing it, but Representative White, we are also, our staff are available to meet one-on-one with you to take a deeper dive into anything you want to learn about. So just feel free to email me on like any specifics and I'll hook you up with the staff person.
And to be complimentary and totally true, when I sat brand new, and coming in February and having to try to pick it all up, our phone a friend guest spent a lot of time with me to understand the book, the pieces, the facts, the where to move and who to talk to. And when she said she will find you somebody to help you and get you answers, not that we won't pursue them for the whole committee, but I will tell you, they are really diligent about making sure you have what you need or what they can at least get you on anything that you need. Because the follow-up has been tremendous, whether I was sitting here or there. That doesn't seem to make any difference. The information comes quickly and with more depth than I was ready for. Yeah, but go ahead.
And I just have a question on timing. So, when should we have all of our thoughts together in terms of if we want to make any adjustments to the budget, when will we be having that conversation? Just so we can all be thinking about whatever homework we feel we need to do, when do we need to have it completed so that we don't miss any deadlines?
Well, let's go back and work back from crossover to, right? So we have, in fact, 3 weeks left that we have to be done with it. We have to get to the language. We have to get to the budget pieces. The language is starting to come in next week. I've already, Ledge Council is working on their portion. The language questions coming in next week, very much at the end of next week or the beginning of the following week. So if there's anything, we don't have much of anything on the wall at this point. I don't know what else is coming. You know what? I think that maybe the message that got out, it said education and property taxes is it, and our wall has usually got a whole bunch of,
Yeah.
I don't want to pick on it, but I want blue taillights and I want green, I want green sirens and green eggs and ham.
There's
Yes.
bill coming, it will come hopefully maybe next week. It's, a bunch of different policy items that could be considered. So if we could have some time for those conversations.
That makes me the question, do we know how backed up Ledge Council is?
They're probably on.
I've got 3 in there and I have just gotten the first email on the question.
Well, I do know that they brought back, the lady that we had towards the end of the session that helped us out.
Marissa Savage?
Yes. they
Yeah,
brought
about
her
with
back
education, because of the education.
Because of drafting everything
Yeah.
out, so yeah.
Yeah.
So I do know that they're backed
Yeah.
up. They're,
That's
They're
gonna
gonna be
happen.
water
And they
retirement.
hired a new attorney for HR.
Mhm.
Just a new attorney who's also working a little bit with HR staff, Sophie Zadney, Zadney. And then we had, last year, we also got Maggie Farron, who replaced Damien, who was helping out with the different panels.
Yeah.
So that freed him up to do what he's doing service.
I guess thank you. The answer to your question, I believe, is 3 weeks may sound like a long time, but if somebody has some things that they want to see acted on, and then of course we have to have testimony on them and really understand what they are. The time is gonna run out very quickly. We're going into language next, and then that's the spot where any language or policy would be, and that would have to be vetted and testified and pieced. If it's a budget thing, I think I guess I've heard pretty clearly is, I thought Chris Root put it pretty well from joint fiscal, that there wasn't the opportunities, it was the constraints, that we were, that budgeted 2 pages of constraints as opposed to opportunities. So my concerns are, you don't have much time, I guess is what I would say. Policy is, we're into policy next week and the week after, and then we have a week to hear any additional pieces. And then we're at crossover. We get a little bit additional time.
March 21st, so basically the week
Oh, that's a
after
little
we
bit
come
more.
back from town meeting break, we most likely. probably not.
Finish it.
If there's something that really wants to be acted on, it's gonna have to be acted on before we leave for town meeting, so that when we come back, we're wrapping up wherever we're at, I would say. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, no,
That's where we're, so, yes.
Are we also gonna have, are we gonna talk about the revenue issue or additional revenue sources? Is that, or how does that come into our conversation?
That's an excellent question, because that's something that we've been talking about, working on in terms of the piece. I guess my first part to that is I hope that everybody is very much understanding that, or at least learning and understanding that the JTOC transfer piece that is in the governor's recommend as the concern of all the projects that may or may not be impacted, very likely to be impacted if we don't keep that in the building appropriations. We have to be working with them to make sure they've got that money for general funds committed somewhere else, and we're looking to ask them to give $20 million to us, or in effect, not to us, but to public safety, because we're going to keep 20 million in the transportation fund. We need to make sure that our colleagues all across the universe of appropriations understand where that's at, and I'm certainly working on that. We're certainly working on that, but that's my biggest concern, the bigger pictures. Whether we'll be able to do it in this budget or in this bill, or setting the stage for next year's bill is part of that. So we have 3 weeks to be able to throw those pieces in. We'll need to testify on what those might be. So that has to come back into the picture. I'm not sure I had a great answer to that, but the functional revenues have to be back on the agenda.
Regarding that, 2 things. One is we will be getting on February 15th, the report from the treasurer on the cap and invest study recommendations from the treasurer, which could be relevant. And the other thing is, I wonder about the conversation about purchase and use tax. Whether we would be, starting that conversation. Could be pretty.
yeah, I mean, purchase and use, I mean, that's, if something were to happen with that, it wouldn't be this year. I think that's the
Yeah.
longer term.
Yeah.
But I know me and Matt are, are having those conversations, next door. But that's all depending on how the reform sugars out.
Yeah.
But we do have a voice
Just
that
keep it
we're
in-
relaying.
Keep it in circulation.
Yeah. But it's not gonna happen. Well, it's gonna happen this year.
Well.
Well, you never know.
You can wave the wand.
Yeah.
It might be good to have a day or two where we really just talk about that long-term funding strategy. There's a number of ideas. We had a good study that was done. We should have at least some good discussions about those. Not sure you're gonna be able to raise any additional revenue this year, but there's opportunities there. And I wonder if moving that money, JTOC transfer, is that a policy change where that would have to be in our budget this year?
Well, there's language, yeah, it's notwithstanding, I don't mean technically, I guess it would be in our, but yeah, it would be in the policy, so there's
Yeah.
notwithstanding section, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which may or may not go over too well before Christmas, maybe.
Well,
Right,
it's true.
and in a
So
way, it's not like.
here's the,
Yeah.
I was gonna say, it's not new money, it's money, we're
Correct.
just moving them around in different categories.
Right,
We were gonna speak about additional revenues, but were we talking about a money on EVs or something along those lines? Is that part of it?
Yes, that's a longer, so there was a study done, so, when we start looking at long-term revenues, I mean, we should get testimony on exactly where that study is. Other states are doing it, and we're, I think, expecting in maybe 2 years. we might
There was
be
an
ready for it.
expectation, my
Yeah.
understanding is that when we hit a certain threshold in the amount of
15%.
electric
Yeah,
vehicles,
that's what it's
we
about.
we would go into a mileage-based user fee, that's already been part of the bills that have been passed.
Yeah.
For electric, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's in the long range timeline, then, right?
Well,
Yeah, I think it's in the near
hopefully it's sooner
future.
rather than later, because last I heard, we were up to that testimony told us we have 14.6,
Yeah.
14.
and that trigger is 15%.
Oh, that's the trigger, okay.
So a mileage-based user fee is coming.
I mean, I don't want to speak for the administration, but I think we'll see something this year.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
And just to make a comment, the reason we are up at that level in the amount of time we did is because of the incentives.
You're right.
Well, at least in part,
Right.
at least in part, there was obviously a lot of pieces that, a lot of other incentives and utility incentives and federal incentives that aren't within our control, but we did have our own incentives, so it's potentially, at least in part, that it was. There were other parts to it. I guess it's a little bit dangerous part, but as a new chair and with 5 new members, I don't know how some of the people that have been here a little bit, this is not something that was done in my 3 years that I've been here. We didn't have ever open discussion like this. So it's a little dangerous and it's a little uncomfortable at times because you don't want to necessarily say the wrong thing and it's out there for the record. But I guess I really appreciate that. I hope that you understand that maybe that's the case. And if you don't understand what I'm trying to get at, please talk to some people that have been around for a while. It's a uncomfortable, but it's a little different than anything we've done in the limited time that I've been here. So I may not be able to answer every question that's had. I may not be able to get everything done. And sometimes having discussion sets an expectation that we're going to get to everything. And now I might be learning why maybe it's not necessarily a good idea to have such public conversation about it. But I do want people to understand the issues and to be able to ask and be able to be involved. But I can't guarantee you we're going to get to everything. And I'm certainly learning the lesson of the danger of open discussion and the positive side of an open discussion. But it hasn't been used in the 3 years that I've been here, that I am now trying to. So bear with it and also understand there may be disappointment. There may be some pieces. I thought that for me today, the way that our JFO person put the budget in the picture of all the constraints we're in, as opposed to all the opportunities we're in, is really sobering to me. I do have some ideas about what I want to try to get done, but we're here for 2 years. We'll all be back most likely in the same, I'm not sure exactly how that works, but getting some of these things done, as you can see, things geared towards a 1 year and to get ahead of it is really difficult. So I appreciate the feedback. I appreciate the openness. Yes, I'm not available right now as much as I will be, but that'll be freed up soon. The follow-up will come quicker, but sometimes things do move a little slowly. I appreciate your input. We're adjourned for lunch and we'll see you back. We'll start on time at 1 because